webinar. It will be about 60 minutes, give or take a few minutes, about 45 minutes for the presentation and 15 minutes for questions. My colleagues are here joining us to support in answering the questions. Sarah, Yasir, and Danny will be doing that. For questions related to the test, to the task, please type the questions, any questions that you have in the Q&A section. For the chat box, can you just use that to respond to me if I set you a task or ask you a question? As you'll appreciate, there's a lot of you on here at the moment, and it won't be possible to answer everyone's question. So if you have a question that's similar to yours in the Q&A box, please like it so we know which ones to focus on. The webinar is being recorded and we'll email you tomorrow with the link. If you have any questions about your test booking, please contact your local test center. Okay, let's get going. So what I'm going to cover today is General Training Writing Task 1, and we're going to look at what it is. We're also going to look at how it's assessed. We're going to look at types of letters, understanding the question and the type of letter. And we're going to talk briefly about register and vocabulary, and hopefully have some time for questions at the end. Okay, let's start with the first question. What is General Training Writing Task 1? Could you type in your ideas in the chat box? What do you know about it? Very good. Yes. It is a letter. Well done. We have the number of words from some people. Excellent, good. So it is a letter. It's usually transactional in nature. That means you want someone to do something for you, or you need to do something for someone. It can be formal, semi-formal, or informal. It's about 150 words you need to write for the letter, and it takes about 20 minutes, and it's 1/3 of the overall score for IELTS writing. Let's have a look at how it's assessed. Task achievement, that means how well you answered the question. Did you answer the question? Did you include all the parts that you've been asked to include? Cohesion and coherence, that means organization. Did you organize the information in a logical order? How well did you link your ideas? Lexical resource, this is to do with your vocabulary. Did you use a good range without too many spelling mistakes? And lastly, grammar, range, and accuracy. Did you use the correct tenses? Well, is the letter referring to the past, the present, or the future? What types of letters do you think you might have to write? Can you type in your ideas into the chat box? Formal, informal, complaint. Very good. Lots of ideas. Excellent. Here is a list of the types of letters, some of the letters you might be asked to write. So a letter of complaint, requesting information, apologizing, giving advice, possibly making suggestions, asking for help, applying for a job, inviting, accepting or refusing, and giving instructions. We're going to look at a couple of examples in a moment. I'm going to give you some situations now, and I'd like you to decide by typing in the chat box what type of letter you think it is. Is it, for example, a letter of complaint? Is it a letter of apology, and so on? Here's the first situation. You want someone to collect your post and water your plants while you're on holiday. Type in your answers. Very good. It's asking for help, and it would probably be informal. Let's go to the next situation. You're unwell after eating at a restaurant. What type of letter, and is it formal or informal? Lots of ideas coming in there. Very good. It would be a letter of complaint, and it would be formal. Here's number 3. You want to know about English classes at a language school. What type of letter is it? Is it formal or informal? Very good. Lots of ideas again coming in. It's requesting information, and it would probably be formal. Number 4. You want to tell someone about things to do and see in your hometown. What type of letter is this? I'm not sure it's a request letter. Keep going. Informal type of letter. Very good. Lots of answers coming in there. Giving advice, making suggestions, probably informal. Here we go to number 5. You will not be able to attend an interview that has been arranged. What type of letter is this? Yes, formal. And the type of letter. Great, lots of ideas. Well done, everyone. Apologizing. Number 6. You want to be considered for the position as an instructor on a holiday camp. What type of letter is this? Formal, yes. What type of letter? Well done. Lots of answers coming in. Applying for a job, and yes, formal. Number 7. You want to ask someone to your birthday party. Yes, probably informal, and yes, a letter of invitation. And finally, you're renting your apartment to visitors and need to explain the practicalities. What kind of letter is this? Lots of answers again coming in. Well done. Giving instruction, semi-formal or formal, I would say. Okay, well done everyone. Moving on, we're going to look at a typical question. A typical question in General Training Writing Task 1 usually consists of 3 parts: the situation, the instructions, and there are 3 bullet points that you must write about. Here's an example. In the blue at the top, you can see the situation. You live in a rented flat and there's a leak under the sink in the kitchen. The instructions are in red. Write a letter to your landlord. And the bullet points are what you have to include in your letter. You have to describe the problem, explain how the situation affects you, and suggest a time and date for someone to come and fix it. So what do you do when you get a question like this? Well, to understand exactly what you need to write, you could ask yourself the following questions. You don't need to write in the chat box, just have a think for a minute. Okay, so ask yourself, what type of letter is it? Well, in this case, it's a letter of complaint and probably formal. Who am I writing to? In this case, my landlord. Do I know the person's name? Question 3, what register should I use? Formal or informal? Again, I think it should be formal. How many parts are there to the question? What do I need to include? Well, there are 3. Describing the problem, explaining, and suggesting. So those are the 3 parts that I have to include. Okay, now over to you. Have a look at another example. I'll give you a bit of time to read it. In the chat box, type in your answers for the first 2 questions. So what type of letter is it, and who am I writing to? When you're thinking about who you're writing to, always ask yourself, would I know this, should I know this person's name? Would I normally know this person's name? So in the case of the landlord, yes, you probably do know this person's name. In this case, what do you think? Would you know their name? No, I agree. You probably wouldn't know their name. So what type of letter is it? It's, yes, asking for information. Who am I writing to? Well, the City Tourist Accommodation Centre is not a person, so who would I be writing to? Yeah, possibly a team, possibly a manager. Would I know this person's name, do you think? Right, probably not. So how would you start this letter? Yes, Kavian, probably with dear sir or madam. Okay, questions 3 and question 4. What register should I use? And how many parts are there? Very good. There are 3 parts, and yes, it would probably be formal. So what would it look like, this letter? So probably starting with the Dear Sir, Madam, and then giving a little bit of background about the situation, describing the situation. Something along the lines of saying who I am. I'm a student, traveling with my friends to Vancouver from the 5th to the 26th of July. That's 3 weeks, a nice long holiday. We're looking for self-catering accommodation, possibly a flat. Maybe say how many bedrooms you're looking for. In this case, probably 4. Ask for other relevant information. This one's quite tricky. What other relevant information do you think you could ask for in your letter? The price, very good. Check-in time, good. Wi-Fi, very good. The area, yes, possibly asking if it's close to the city centre or places of interest. Wi-Fi again, the amenities, very good. Yes, whether it's smoking or non-smoking, and so on. So you're building up a little scenario, you're building up a little story to include in your letter. Okay. Moving on. Register. Now that came up in the chat box. Some of you asked, what is register? Register is the level of formality. Whether in this case for our letter, whether it's formal or informal. So how do you decide register or level of formality? The first thing to ask yourself is about the person that you're writing to. Do you know them? As we said before, in the case of the landlord, we decided that yes, we probably do know them and know them well enough to know their name. Are they in a position of authority? In the case of the landlord, again, probably yes. The reason you're writing, are you asking for something, or are you offering something? Are you asking for something big or small? So how does register affect your writing? Well, it would affect your choice of language, whether you use more formal language or less formal language. Here, if you take a look, we have an example of what I mean. How does it affect your vocabulary? So in this case, we have attend for formal, come to for informal. Punctuation, you can use dashes and so on. Contractions affect formality. Grammar can affect formality. Less direct forms, more direct forms for informal, less direct forms for formal. And there's an example there for you. I was wondering if you could, and can you for the informal. And clear paragraphs as well. It's a good idea when practicing for general training writing task 1 to learn some fixed phrases for starting and finishing a letter. here are some examples for you. How to start a letter and how to end a letter. If you look at the formal box, so if you don't know the person's name, start with Dear Madam, Dear Sir. If you do know their name, like the landlord, Dear Miss Jones. For the informal, you'd probably use their first name. Dear Jack, hi Jack. And ending the letter, looking at the formal, I look forward to hearing from you soon. And signing off with yours faithfully or yours sincerely. Do you know the difference? When do we use yours faithfully? When do we use yours sincerely? Let's start with yours faithfully. Yep, it's for a formal letter, but in order to use yours faithfully, how would we start a letter? Okay, let's do it the other way around. If I start the letter with Dear Sir or Madam, Dear Madam or Dear Sir, how should I end the letter? With yours faithfully or yours sincerely? So the question again, if I start the letter with Dear Sir or Dear Madam, very good. Finish with yours faithfully. And if I know the person's name, Dear Ms. Jones, I would finish it, yours sincerely. Somebody asked in the chat box, can we just say hi? I think for a letter for general training writing task 1, I would say use the person's name. So hi Jack, hi Sally, and so on. You can find these fixed phrases for letter writing on our website, learnenglish.org, take IELTS, and so on. Lots of resources there for you. Also, you need to practice a little bit on your vocabulary, not just for the writing task 1, general training writing task 1, but for the test as a whole. One way of developing your vocabulary is to practice the vocabulary, learn the vocabulary in groups or themes. Here's an example. In this case, we're looking at renting accommodation. So all the words related to that theme, to that situation. Get yourself a vocabulary notebook and make a note of words related to various themes. You can brainstorm your ideas. When you're doing the actual practice, do use your vocabulary notebooks. Take a look at it while you're writing. Remember, it's a practice at that time. It's not a test. What's important is learning the vocabulary, but even more important is knowing how to use it. There's also vocabulary practice available on our apps and websites. I'll talk a little bit more about them at the end. So, to sum up, when you get the task, analyze the question. Ask yourself, who am I writing to? Somebody that I know or I don't know? How well do I know them? Why am I writing? Am I writing to complain? Am I writing to ask for something? Am I writing to give information, and so on? What register should I use? Should it be formal or informal? Remember, that depends on who I'm writing to and how well I know them. Think about the appropriate grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation. Use the bullet points in the question to help you brainstorm for ideas and guide you to paragraph organization. Remember, you need to include all the bullet points in your answer. And if you follow the order of the bullet points, that will ensure that you haven't missed anything. Start and finish correctly. Is it hijack or is it Dear Mrs. Jones? How should you end it? Yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Keep to the time limit, minutes. You have about 20 minutes for writing task 1. Practice at home, time yourself, and make sure that you write in no more than 20 minutes. If you have time, check for some of your typical mistakes and correct them. For example, you might know, or your teacher has told you, that you have you make mistakes with the third person S, for example. Check your writing at the end, read it to make sure that you've paid attention to that point. Another example, maybe you sometimes mistake articles or miss articles like a or an or the. So read through it and make sure that you've included everything. Okay. Well, we seem to have a fair bit of time for questions now, and we'll try to answer them between us. I'm going to go now to the Q&A section and look through your questions. Okay, there's a lot of them. Okay, there's a few questions about tone and register and level of formality. So the level of formality, the tone will depend on the person that you're writing to. So again, whether or not you know the person, how well you know the person, do you know their name? Are they in a position of authority? So, for example, if we go back to the landlord, you would probably know that we expect to know their name. They are in a position of authority, and your letter would be formal. So the tone of your letter needs to be formal. The choice of language needs to be formal. So the word count is another one that seems to have come up. How do you count the words? How do you know? Well, one of the things is counting the words, but I would suggest that you practice your writing on lined paper, or if you're doing it on your computer, if you're going to do a computer delivered one. It's a different scenario. I'll answer that in a moment. But practice writing, possibly on lined paper or plain paper, doesn't really matter. But see how many lines you need to write in your handwriting in order to reach 150 words. So it takes a little bit of practice. For example, you might write 10 or 11 words per line. So that would be 15 lines that you have to write to reach the word count. With the computer delivered version, you have the word count at the bottom of the screen, so you don't need to count. Okay, I'm just trying to scroll through. There's a question about idioms that's come up. So idioms, obviously, well, I would say they are informal, so I wouldn't put them into a formal letter. Be careful with idioms. I know it's a good way to show your range of language, but they need to be appropriate. So I would say not for a formal letter, but if used appropriately in an informal letter, I think that would work. Okay, scrolling through the questions. I'm sorry if I'm missing any. I'm trying to answer as many as I can. Okay, somebody's asking about receiving the material. You won't be getting the material, but the webinar is being recorded and the link will be sent to you to take a look at. How can we activate vocabulary knowledge? That's a good question from Anonymous. There are lots of good practice books and resources out there. So, as I said before, using a resource like the IELTS Word Power, the IELTS app, our websites, takeielts.org and learnenglish.org. These are all really good resources, and it's really important to work on vocabulary, I think, in terms of groups and themes. So if you have a notebook that you write into, or you do it on your computer or laptop or even phone, you need to kind of collate and collect the vocabulary in one place. When you're doing the writing, when you're doing your practice, have that book open in front of you, have your tablet open in front of you, so you can refer to your vocabulary and use it in your writing. I know that that's going to take you more than 20 minutes, but it's a good way to learn how to actually use the words, not just memorize them or learn them. Okay, moving on. Parta asks about the subject so that's a good question. No, you don't need to put in subject, you don't need to put in the address. Even if you do put that in, it won't be part of the word count. So please don't put in a subject line, don't put in an address. It won't count. It seems my screen's frozen. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. My screen froze for a bit. I'm not sure if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that. My screen froze for a second. I'm back now. Let's go back to the questions. Sorry about that. Right. Can I write dear? Yes, you can write dear. So it's a way to start a formal letter or even an informal letter. So dear Mr. Jones or dear Sally. Yes, you can use that to start a letter. Maximum score in task 1. So the maximum score you can get in IELTS is 9. If you would like a more detailed explanation of the band descriptors, take a look at our website, takeielts.org. You can download the public version of the band descriptors, how the test is marked. You can download the PDF there. Florence asks, is it important to paraphrase? Yes, I mean, it's a good idea to, if you can think of synonyms, if you can think of different words that are not directly in the question, so you're not just copy pasting, yes, it's a good idea to paraphrase. It's a good way to show off your range of vocabulary. Somebody's asking about suggestions for IELTS preparation. Again, if you go to our website, takeielts.org, there are resources there for you. I would really strongly suggest you download our free app, our IELTS app. There's lots of practice there for you on all 4 skills. Let's see. Somebody's asking about the computer test or the written test. Jonathan, which one would we recommend? Jonathan has asked. It kind of depends on you, on how confident you are with typing, how quickly you can type, how confident you are with using a computer. In terms of the content of the test, it's completely the same, so it makes no difference. It really is up to you. Right. Scrolling through questions about address I've answered. Sample letter, yes, you can find those again if you have a look on our website. There are questions, sample questions there for you as well. Let's see. Somebody's asked about to whom it may concern. That's a good question. That's usually the way you would start a statement, a letter, not a letter, but a statement, a declaration, rather than a letter. So please don't use to whom it may concern. Start with dear. So again, dear Jack, dear Sally, or dear Mr. Jones, or dear Miss Smith. Pen or pencil, somebody has asked, you can use either. So you can use a pen or a pencil in the writing test. Anonymous has asked which tenses should we use. That does depend on your letter. So whether the letter is referring to something that has happened in the past, so you would use the past tenses. Something that's going to happen in the future, for example, the trip to Vancouver coming up in July, then you would use future tenses. Scrolling through some more. I'm sorry if I'm missing any of the questions. They are jumping up quite quickly. Should the spelling be consistent? Ehsan has asked. If you're referring to American and British spelling, yes, it does need to be consistent. You can use either American spelling or British spelling, but if you use American spelling, for example, COLOR for color, then somewhere else in you write, let's think of another word, labor, LABOUR, then that would be considered inconsistent. So yes, either American spelling or British spelling. Moving on. The difference between academic and general training. There are 4 parts to the test. Listening, reading, writing and speaking. The listening and the speaking are the same for general and academic. The writing, task 1 for the general training is a letter, and that's what we've looked at now. For data, so in the form of a chart or a graph. We had this webinar on Tuesday on academic writing task 1. Task 2 is the same for both general and academic writing. In the reading, there are three parts to the reading for both, but the types of text are different. Do look out for the webinars that are coming up on academic reading and general training reading. Is it necessary, Abdullah asks, to introduce at the start? So if you're writing to somebody who doesn't know you, I would suggest that yes, you would probably say who you are and why you're writing. So if you're writing to your friend Jack, I don't think it's necessary to introduce yourself, but you would probably say why you're writing. So depending on how well you know the person, how well they know you, would you introduce yourself to your friend Jack? Probably not. Would you introduce yourself to the tourist information office that you're writing to in Vancouver? Probably yes, but not by saying, hello, my name is Abdullah, but to say that you're a student and you're traveling to Vancouver the following dates and you're writing to get some information. So why you're writing. Okay, there's a poll question that's just come up. We'd just like to find out a little bit more about you. Have you taken the IELTS test before? And what score do you need? Thank you. I'll keep reading through your questions. Ali Reza has asked about the recording from the last webinar. The link was shared with the participants of that webinar. I I need to check with my colleagues to see whether it's available anywhere else. But the webinars will be repeated periodically, so do take a look at our website, takeielts.org, and register for upcoming webinars. I'm afraid I don't know anything about the cost of the exam. You'll have to contact your local test center, the test center in your country. Somebody asks about when and where the general is useful. If you're planning on taking the IELTS exam, then you need to talk to the organization that you're applying to ask them which version of the test you need to take. Usually for further studies, you would need to take the academic. For immigration purposes, for work, it's usually general. But please do check with the organization that you're applying to. Okay. Zahra has asked the difference between formal and semi-formal. So formal, somebody that you don't know at all, somebody you don't know, possibly that you don't know their name, perhaps you've never met them. Semi-formal, I suppose I would give the example of the landlord. For those of us that rent a property, how well do you know your landlord? Do you have a good relationship with them? Do you know their name, or do you go through an agency to rent your property? So if you know them fairly well, but they are in a level of authority, I would say that the letter is semi-formal. Abdullah, I would say for fixed phrases of how to start a letter, take a look at some of the vocabulary ways to start a letter. I'm writing to inquire about, I'm writing to inform you about is a good way to start a letter, yeah. The links for the webinar will be sent to you at the end of the webinar. There's no maximum word count, so you can write more than 150 words. But again, the recommendation is to write around 150 to ensure that you cover all the points. And remember, you only have 20 minutes. How much can you write physically in 20 minutes? So try to aim for around 150, 160 words. Okay. Is it mandatory to answer all the bullet points? Yes, you have to include all the bullet points in your answer. Remember, in the assessment criteria, one of the parts is task achievement, which means basically, did you answer the question, how well and how completely you answered the question. So the answer is yes, you have to include all the bullet points. Otherwise, you haven't answered the question completely. Somebody asks about handwriting. That's a really good question. You don't get any extra marks for beautiful handwriting, I'm afraid. So, but I would say that it needs to be legible. So I need to be able to read it fairly easily. So in that sense, handwriting does matter. But in terms of how beautiful your cursive writing is, I'm not sure that, I don't think that makes a difference. So around 150 words, Hossein, to cover all the bullet points. I mean, I'm not sure you'd be able to answer the question fully enough in less than that. Yulia asked, can we make up a name? Yes, of course. Your imaginary landlord, what's his name? Dear Mr. Jones, dear Mrs. Smith. Let's see. As far as I know, we can use informal words. So in an informal letter, yes, you can use informal words and you can use contractions, Mohammed. But in the formal letter, to make writing more, language more formal, then avoid the use of contractions. Yes, the app. Okay, I think we're coming up to the end, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to come out of the Q&A. I'm really sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions. Many thanks to my colleagues who have been answering the questions in the chat box. I'll just come back to my slides now and show you our resources. If you don't know about it already, take a look at our official Facebook page. We have resources, suggestions, and tips there, and also IELTS experts who can answer any questions that I've missed. On our website, takeielts.org, you can do the free computer-delivered familiarization test. It'll give you a flavor of what the computer-delivered test is like. We've also got preparation courses that we run in conjunction with Future Learn. They are free. The app that I was talking about is the IELTS Prep app. It's free and you can download it right away onto your smartphone or tablet. There are lots of practice tests, grammar tips, vocabulary practice, quizzes, and more. And it keeps sending you daily reminders, which is good when we sometimes forget to do practice. Our other app is the IELTS Word Power. And if you register to take the test with us, you'll also get, I forgot the road to IELTS, sorry, I'll go back to that. If you register to take the test with us, you'll get access to an online course that we run. You have some, anybody can access the Road to IELTS course. Part of it is free. If you register to take the course with us, you'll get extra hours of practice that you can do online. You can also get the books and study guides, which are official practice materials and top tips. So those are our resources. But your go-to place is takeielts.org if you want to find out more information about the test and resources. There will be a survey that will be sent to you at the end of this. If you wouldn't mind completing that, that would be really good for us to know what you would like more or less of. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that you found it useful. Good luck with your studies and stay safe. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Layla. Goodbye, everyone.